Welcome back to our show, brought to you by Tennova Healthcare. Tennova.com is the website where you can learn more about them. They've got locations across East Tennessee. Tennova Healthcare offers cardiac care, orthopedics, cancer care, which they helped me with, women's health and services, imaging, home care and hospice services, rehabilitation services, senior services, and much, much more. Tennova Healthcare is the name to trust in East Tennessee. I trusted them with my life. I still have my life. I credit Tennova. You should trust Tennova too. All right, back with Shazan, David, Bob, and Jimmy. I want to talk about the run game. I kind of gave them a kick in the tail last week. I want to show some numbers that we put up last week, and we've added in yesterday. Look at that. In the first half of games against BCS foes, Tennessee just had not been running the ball all that well, but they got lit into this week. Club 90 is what Butch Jones called them, and you saw some response in the first half there. Almost 6 yards per carry. Now, Auburn doesn't have the best defense in the world, but still, some of those other teams up there don't have spectacular defenses either, and they weren't getting as good of numbers. David Ligon, you're the XO lineman. Your thoughts on the run game?
Well, anytime you go over 200 yards against an SEC opponent, you're having a pretty good day. Now, you know, what was different? Mentality, attitude, and I think they really got in their faces over the past week, and that helped them out. Look, I think these guys have the physical tools to be a good offensive line. They obviously have not played to the level that they've been built up prior to, but you know, they showed a little bit of it. You know, there were still some mistakes and some things that went on with, you know, some false starts and things like that. But you know, running the football, it was a good day. Auburn a little bit lighter on the defensive line. That always helps out when you're 300 plus pounds and the guy across from you is only 280, 290. You know, physics is in your advantage.
We're gonna do the speed and bad angle thing all day. Get your compass and protractor out. Your thoughts on the run game yesterday? The attitude looked better.
Oh, definitely, and I feel like the running backs were giving us the first, second, third effort. Good faking. Quarterback Dobbs is really sticking in there. He's really riding them out, and you know, like I said, now we got a quarterback that poses a double threat. So now they got to watch the quarterback also. That helps the running backs a bit.
They look a little. I mean, the backs had a decent day yesterday, but let's face it, they are what they are. They're not fast guys. There were probably some yards left out there. But I think it is clear at this point, Dobbs is doing a lot more of the zone reading than Worley ever was, because the plays are a little bit slower developing, it seems.
Yeah, I actually thought that Tennessee's running backs yesterday probably had their best game as far as what Shazan touched on. They got yards after they got hit for the first time, and we haven't been seeing a whole lot of that.
was a perfect example.
Yeah,
Great run.
And he had some other runs where he got hit, got to the second level, got hit, spun off, kept going. Hadn't seen very much of that this year.
Any thoughts on the run game? Go ahead.
No,
I was going to ask just about the offensive line in general. Even though the run game looked better yesterday, still had a 3rd and 1 and a 4th and 1 where they couldn't convert. You can question play calling, but still, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 with that line, you're supposed to punch a hole. You had at least once where Josh Dobbs was just left to dry. You had everybody on the offensive line turning around and watched 4 guys just have a jailbreak on Dobbs at one point. Yeah. Overall offensive line performance.
Well, I thought it was pretty good. And it's like David said, you get over 200 yards against an SEC defense, that's pretty good. I thought there were some holes there. I thought the backs ran better and broke more tackles. On a couple of short yardage ones, they were such slow developing plays, though. That's what bothered me about them. I didn't particularly like the calls there, but I thought the offensive line overall played well enough. It was just that they couldn't keep pace with what Auburn was doing offensively.
I want to get right now to the reason. A lot of people say, how can you look good against, or better, against Georgia and South Carolina and not good against Missouri and Auburn? What has changed? And I think what's changed is the matchup that you're getting. When you look at the teams that have embarrassed Tennessee, all right, you've got Oregon, spread, up-tempo, blazing fast. You got Auburn, spread, up-tempo, blazing fast. Missouri, same thing. They spread you out, make you play in space. Then you got Alabama, who's going to blow out most teams in the country, so they don't even count. You look at Florida, you're in that game. Georgia, more traditional, you're in that game. South Carolina, more traditional, you're in that game. Let's take a look at the numbers here. Tennessee plays lost in space, to steal the line from the old television. So rushing yards per game against those 3 spread teams. They're allowing 333 yards per rush. Against those traditional teams I mentioned, including Alabama, only 218, 115 yards worse against those spread teams. Total yards per game, look at that, huge difference. More than 100 yards per game against those spread teams. Yards per play. 7.76 yards per play against Oregon, Auburn, and Missouri. Against the traditional teams, 6.06, so a yard and a half better. Take Alabama out of that mix just because they should be playing in the AFC East instead of the SEC. You're 2 yards better against the traditional good teams, but traditional offenses versus that spread team. I don't think there's any question. It's pretty simple. These teams that spread you out and expose your lack of speed, they're running all over you. Those are the ones that are embarrassing. You've been in the other games. Am I wrong on that? That's my analysis. It's the matchup of who you're playing, and unfortunately for Tennessee, you got those speed spread teams after you got those traditional teams when everybody got their hopes up.
Yep.
Thoughts?
No, I think Tennessee, to me, they look slow. And I will defer to Shazan and the angles, but I'm telling you, they look slow. And even when they take a good angle, I sometimes think they don't make the play because of a lack of speed.
Here's another thing that was interesting in the spring, watching all the practices. I remember John Jancic and Willie Martinez every day, it seemed like after practice, talking about how poor Tennessee was as a tackling team.
Like yesterday.
Yeah, and that has reared its head, in particular against the spread teams. But I remember them talking about teaching them how to, and apparently they'd had some bad habits for a number of years, and maybe it's hard to break those. But I do remember those coaches in particular talking about how this is a poor tackling team in the spring.
Guys, I don't see a big, to me, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. To me, it's no surprise that this team would perform better against a traditional style offense as opposed to one that's going to spread you out and has all kinds of blazing speed out there, which I don't think you got it. Your thoughts? Am I wrong on that?
I think Tennessee is probably 3 to 4 great players on offense and defense on building a really great team. And what happens when you spread them out, you expose them, and you don't have backup, and they're out there all by themselves, and by the time you get there, it's just too late.
Yeah.
David?
I mean, that's the idea of a spread offense is you're getting the ball out in space where leverage, you're hoping that on offense you have, there's 2 blockers on one or something. The guy has one guy to make miss. And if it is poor tackling, well, and he's got great speed and you're lacking some of it or taking it, whatever, he's going to beat you to the end zone and score points on you.
Okay, that's our theory. Lost in space. These guys seem to agree. All right, when we come back, Chuck Cavaleras, Mike Strange, Sterling Hinton, Bobby Scott. We're going to talk about Josh Dobbs. We're going to talk about Tennessee not being able to get into the end zone. And we're going to talk about Tennessee's troubles with dual threat quarterbacks. Come on back on the Enrichment Sports Source.
You are watching East Tennessee's first and only year-round sports talk show on television.